The great thing about it, I love, is like the first guest I've ever had on the podcast was my mom, and now you're
You
following.
lying piece of shit. You just said this was the first one.
She's-
You
what-
son of a...
First off, welcome to the Night Owl. This is the first Night Owl interview that I've had on this podcast.
Popping cherries over here.
Popping all the cherries. And I'm excited for this particular guest because not only is he a buddy of mine and a good friend of mine, but someone who's very talented and attractive. Yeah, very talented, very attractive, obviously. And we have a lot of similarities, and it's all horror. So, yeah, everybody welcome Joe, Uncle Joe Bandelli to the crew.
Hello, everyone. Applause. Hold it. Thank you. Appreciate it. I like that we're talking to people, but no one is actually here right now. So it's just you and me.
It's just me. Yeah.
But I love this. Thank you for having me on the show. I know you haven't done many of these or any of these, as you just said.
Right.
So this is fun, and we're in October, so we get to talk horror.
We get to talk all things horror. And the great thing about it, I love, is like the first guest I've ever had on the podcast was my mom, and now you're
You
following.
lying piece of shit. You just said this was the first one. You son of a...
She was the first. She was the first guest on the Bird Brain. You're the first guest on the Night Owl. So it's like two very, I think powerhouses. To
Fair
say
enough.
At least, yeah.
I know, and we're both Cowboys fans. So
You're both Cowboys
You either
fans.
are going to gain a lot of listeners from that or lose them. So you
a
probably wound
lot.
up losing them. So sorry about that.
So before I let you brag about yourself, I want to brag about you to the audience. So, the great thing about it is that we're both in film, and you have had a very extensive career in terms of your film prowess, in terms of production, directing, acting. You had your own series, Bum Bloods.
Yep. Bumbloods.com.
Bumbloods.com. Check it out. You were producer on a series, Hell House.
Correct.
Hell House LLC. That's the full title, yeah. Which is funny because I've watched Hell House multiple times, and it was very much a movie I was looking forward to seeing when it first came out. And then we had a conversation randomly and it comes to find out you were the producer on Hell House.
Correct.
And also, too, Seclusion is a movie that's out this year, or it's in pre-production?
Seclusion actually came out 16 years. No, Seclusion came out in 2015. Seclusion's been out for a while. Seclusion was my feature directorial debut. So that's been out for both Hell House LLC and Seclusion came out the same year. Seclusion was a found footage film.
Yep.
I mean, it is. It actually is a found footage film.
It exists.
But it was a little bit of a smaller budget than Seclusion. And Hell House has grown tremendously. We've had 2 sequels for it. The third one, Hell House LLC 3, Lake of Fire, just came out on Shudder. It's a Shudder exclusive. That just came out a few weeks ago, so head to Shudder and check that out.
Yeah.
They also have the first and second one there. And then Seclusion sort of just died because people didn't like it as much.
Seclusion was secluded.
House. It's my writing and producing partner, Matthew Wise, we made it together, and it was sort of a love letter to not Haunted Houses. That's Hell House.
Yeah.
It was a sort of love letter to Cabin in the Woods type films. So it's a whodunit Cabin in the Woods film. The story is good. I would say the story and the twist is really, really good, but, it was a low-budget film, so there were issues along the way, but it's out there. It's on Amazon Prime if anyone wants to check it out. The cast was amazing. The crew was amazing, so... and I think a lot of those people in the next 5 to 10 years, some of them already, you'd probably be like, oh, shit, these people are awesome. And then you'll go back and be like, oh, they were in Seclusion.
So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so you can say that I'm the reason why they got their success.
Yeah, so you didn't have me in Seclusion, which explains a lot, but I'm not bitter or whatever. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's
well, those people are, I feel like all of them are going to be like, we wouldn't have done it without Joe. But realistically, they're probably all going to be like, why did we do that movie? No, but we have a great cast. We had a great cast in it. Clea Alsip, she's in a ton of Broadway shows. She's blowing up. Dwayne Cooper, Jackie Byrne, Nicole Payson, Allison Wells, Ralph Cashin, great cast,
Yeah.
amazing cast. And then Matt and I both were also in it. And some people have said some not so nice things about the guys who made it being in the film. Some people said some nice things, but you know, Matt and I have done a lot of things. We've written for a while together, and we did Bum Bloods together, and we were both the stars of Bum Bloods. So we have fun. So at the end of the day, that's the whole point of making movies, is to have fun and to entertain people
and enjoy it.
Yep.
Well, first off, shout out to Jackie Byrne. She'll probably never see this, but whatever.
You know what? I'm going to make sure Jackie Byrne sees this because she's fucking dope as shit. She's a comedian. She's hilarious.
Well, Jackie and I, we went to school together.
Did you?
So I know Jackie Byrne.
I did not know that.
That's my homie.
That's amazing. Jackie was just messaging me earlier today.
No way.
And yeah, I love that girl. I always say this, my film family.
Yeah.
I think every time I do a project, someone gets added to my film family. And Jackie is definitely one of those people that every time I do something, I try to find a way to get her into it.
She's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And she's talented. I remember back in school, I loved watching anything that she was in. So, it makes perfect sense. So so you mentioned that you're a writer. That's one of the things I forgot to mention too, is you're a big time writer. You're a busy boy.
I am a writer.
You are a writer. See, he is a writer.
I mean, I think any person who aspires to be a filmmaker has to have some form of content creation ability.
Yeah.
I've been writing pretty much my whole life, even before I was a filmmaker. Always trying to make people laugh. Eventually trying to scare people. But Matt and I have had a really good collaboration. We've written a few feature films together. I've written a couple comedies on my own, and we've actually had some decent success this year in the festival circuit with some of our screenplays. So we're hoping maybe in the next year or two, some of the scripts that we wrote that aren't for $100,000 budgets, they're maybe a little bit bigger. Hopefully, some of those will get made.
$5 billion.
Yeah. You know, our first one was $100,000, and our second one was $5 billion. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? If you want better, you gotta think better.
Exactly.
Think bigger.
Exactly.
So, bless you.
Bless you.
That's all. Thank you. Thank you. So I think what's dope is like we have some commonalities in terms of we're both Jersey boys.
We're both wearing red shirts.
We're both wearing red, which is not an intentional thing. It just kind of happened, which I'm here for. I feel like it kind of like allows horror to be present.
I'm partially colorblind, so for all I know, I could be gray, green, whatever.
That's perfect.
You're black, right?
Okay. Depends on the sun. The way the sun hits, it varies.
I could have sworn. Not sure.
Well, the thing is like we're both Jersey boys. We both are in the film world, you know, one way or another. Cowboys fans. My mom is
single mother, mama boys,
yes,
mama's boys.
Yes.
Yep.
And I think it's safe to say we're doing our moms proud.
I would think. I hope.
Yeah,
so.
I'm not.
Maybe we should call Mary Lou and see what she thinks.
Right. How do you feel about my process right now, Mom?
I think we're doing good. I'm not sure about your mom, but I feel like my mom has been. My mom's had my back every step of the way. I've always wanted to do random shit, and I've always wanted to be like. I was always that kid or that teenager or that person that was like, I'm gonna try something new or I'm gonna do something different, and everyone else was like, don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it. And my mom was like, if it makes you happy, do it. So.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah. So she's the best. She's a mom and dad all in one.
Yes. I always say it's like when people ask me about my dad, I'm just like, well, my mom. I just told you.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, that's what it is. But my mom, she has my back, but she always says to me, she's like, whatever choice you make, you live with that. You live with your decisions.
But that's because your mom's a cop. Your mom's a hard ass.
Yeah. So there's that.
My mom's a teacher. My mom was a special ed teacher. So my mom was a little softer.
It's like, that's my boy.
Yeah.
You do what you want. She has a different level of patience.
Yeah.
Bless her.
Both amazing.
Yeah.
Different types of amazing.
So also too, we both enjoy horror, but I think it's interesting because, you know, us talking and us even ideas and how we write and concepts and everything like that, it's clear that we have different approaches to horror. Like, for example, what's your top 3 favorite horror movies?
Nightmare on Elm Street, original, Robert Englund.
Okay.
Well, Wes Craven, but Robert Englund plays Freddy Krueger.
Shout out to Wes.
Yeah.
Wes Cray.
Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween.
Yes.
And then the other one is tough. I would say it's either I'd stick with Wes Craven and either say Scream, or I would go. And there's so many fucking horror films that I could go with. I'm
Yeah.
allowed to curse, right?
Oh,
Okay.
fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right. There's so many horror films that I can go with in the 80s and the 90s. But I feel like I'm a big fan of blended horror. So it's either going to be something like Saw, which is psychological
And horror.
and horror,
Yeah.
or in the completely opposite direction and like Shaun of the Dead. That's like horror and comedy.
Well, it's funny. I love Shaun of the Dead, but it was not something that I initially watched. A roommate of mine back in college insisted that we watch it. I was like, all right, whatever. It's usually not my speed because it's zombies, but also it's comedy. But it ended up becoming one of my favorite movies, or just something I like to put on to like check out.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you find yourself? Do you think, although you those are your top three horror movies, do you like
I think I
movies?
just named 8 movies, but yeah, those are my top 3.
So Saw,
I mean, definitely Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm
one, Nightmare on Elm Street 1, Halloween 2, and I actually think in terms of filmmaking, Halloween is 1 and Nightmare on Elm Street is 2, but they're both number 1 and 2.
Okay.
But 3, it's a blend of different things depending on what you want. If you want to go horror comedy,
Yeah.
I'm going one way. If you want to go horror, I'm going the other way. If you want to go psychological, I'm going all over the place. But yeah, ultimately, I think I'm more into filmmakers who challenge things and change things. And I think Edgar Wright really did something with horror comedy. I mean, Sam Raimi did the same thing with Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
I love what what's his name? I can't remember his name, but the guy who directed Cabin in the Woods, Drew. Why can't I?
Becky.
Yeah, Becky. No, Joss Whedon's protege. He's amazing. Drew Goddard. He's amazing. I like when people try new things, and I think what James Wan did with Saw was a completely new thing that we hadn't seen.
Yeah.
What Wes Craven did with Scream was something new. It was a meta horror film. So I like when people try new things and challenge themselves to, they're not afraid to fail and not afraid to take risks, because audiences can be really harsh. But horror is one of those genres where you can fail and then people will accept you again as long as you keep trying and as long as you eventually make something good.
Do you think that's your approach to like how you write and how you I'd say is that your approach to like your creative style is like you have a structure, or do you go in it like, all right, we're gonna start this and then we'll just see what kind of road it takes?
It's always evolving. I think it's a big evolution. I think when I first wrote my first screenplay I ever wrote was a comedy, and I think I wrote it to make people laugh. I wrote it to make like my friends laugh, and being a Jersey boy, being a Cowboys fan in Giants and Eagles territory, being in a fraternity, all of the stereotypes that come along with that type of person. I tried to play up that and have fun with it.
Okay.
And then the next feature I wrote was Seclusion, and I wrote that with Matt. And that one I think when we wrote that script, we were trying to find our voices, and I think the goal was to have a serious twist, whodunit, make you question who the killer is at every moment.
Okay.
And that was a really, really hard writing process, and it took a really long time. But I think what we learned after we made that film was that we took ourselves too seriously. Because and the most successful person that I could think of that this happened to is Sam Raimi, because he made The Evil Dead with Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
And the movie was kind of campy.
Yeah,
and they made
yeah.
it as a serious horror film, and it kind of had like campiness. It kind of had a ridiculous amount of blood. It went over the top in certain things. So, but then some parts were really mysterious and creepy, and then some parts were ridiculous. And I think that's why Evil Dead 2 is sort of a sequel and is sort of a reboot, because they decided to take the same story and apply it with a lot more campiness and a lot more humor and a lot more gore and a lot more funny. And that's how Sam Raimi found his voice, and that's kind of what he went on to be, is that type of director that would have fun with it. And I think the same thing happened. I remember being in a screening of Seclusion in 2016, and we did a Q&A afterwards, and someone raised their hand and they said, did you think it was going to be as funny as it was?
Yeah.
And I remember being like, no. And Matt was like, yes, and answered the question. And I was
Yes,
like, no,
we did.
totally did. I mean, there's definitely scenes in it that are ridiculous, like almost parody type film funny, that we did purposely. But there are some things that just happen, and it's like, that wasn't meant to be funny, but it was. So I think after that, you know, when you're new and you're trying to figure yourself out or whatever, I think a lot of people, you know, I can't speak for everyone, but I think for me, it was like, I was never one of those kids who was like, I'm such an artistic person that I'm just going to be an Academy Award winner and love everything. And people are going to shower me with money and gifts and success. Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, that's
me. Not me.
Yeah.
So I think my thing was, because I've been told no a lot in my life.
Yes.
And because people shut doors and because people were always like, no, you can't do this. You're never going to be successful. Don't go into film. Don't do this. I think my whole thing that I had to get over first was proving that I could tell a story. So I think earlier in my career, I think my mistakes and my mishaps were I wasn't trying to change the game. I wasn't trying to do something unique. I was trying to tell a story and make sure that I got the story across.
And that just be it, right?
And obviously that's boring. And obviously you're not taking risks with that. And I think writing, I caught it quicker. Because writing, I was like, okay, well, let's see. What's something that I like? And eventually it evolved into what kind of stories am I writing? I'm writing stories that I would want to see. Like every horror fan you meet is a critic, a harsh critic too. They have certain horror films that they love and certain horror films that they fucking hate. And and you know, you got to think about it. Like, what if I'm writing a horror film or I'm writing a story? I love whodunits. I love where you don't know who the killer is.
My favorite.
I love comedy. I love when people laugh and joke about things that they're not supposed to laugh about.
Okay.
And then I was just like, well, why don't I just write this shit? And I'm a big believer in writing what you know. If you talk a certain way, if you have a little bit of an attitude to the way you talk, put that into your characters. I think one of the best examples of it is Quentin Tarantino. Like, his characters talk. Like, one of the best parts about his scripts and his films is that the characters have amazing dialogue.
Yeah, they're authentic.
They're authentic, and the dialogue is so unique.
Right.
But that's the thing. That's how Quentin Tarantino talks.
Yes.
He's writing in his own voice.
Right.
But I think some of his like first ever film that he did, not Reservoir Dogs, the dialogue is terrible, and it's not terrible because he's a bad writer or he didn't have the right voice. It's terrible because he didn't have the right people delivering that. And what he learned is he has a very poetic voice in terms of how he writes dialogue, but he needs the right conduit to deliver that dialogue.
Absolutely.
Someone like Samuel L. Jackson, someone like Tim Roth.
Isaiah Frizzell.
Exactly. And that was what he needed to figure out. But again, you write what you know.
Yes.
I maybe I'm limiting myself. I don't think I'm ever going to be the type of person that writes a movie about space or deep sea or something like that. I don't think that's going to be me.
Yeah.
Who knows what my challenges and fears and loves will be in 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, for me, I'm fascinated. There's certain things that I am writing about that are very, very, very true to like my life and my family's life and things that we've gone through, and things that friends have gone through. And, you know, I'm 35. I've already lived a decent life so far. So I feel like there's some experience there. And, you know, you see movies out there and you're like, oh, the same shit over and over and over again. And I think that's what we did with our first film. It was like, we still think it's okay, or good, or maybe, or who the fuck knows. But we were trying to play to an audience, the Cabin in the Woods audience. We were trying to play to a genre audience and just give them a lot of what they already knew and then change it a little bit. And I think we went about it the right way, but I think we failed because we should have been trying to, instead of trying to, you know, pay homage or do this love letter to this genre and follow the same pattern, we should have done everything in the same world, but then fucked up that pattern. Of course. Challenged it and done different things, because that's what the film Cabin in the Woods did. They made a film about a bunch of teens going, or a bunch of, I guess college kids going to, who were actually in their 30s, but college kids going into the Cabin in the Woods, and it was completely changed on the side, and it's funny as shit too. So I think the more I write, the more I'm leaning horror comedy is the way to go.
I was gonna say that. I think that's I was gonna ask you about that too, because I definitely, when I asked you about horror, I feel like your niche is horror comedy. Yeah. You know, basically from what we talked about, even movies that we've exchanged or even saw together, is like you're good at it. I think for me, it's
Sorry,
okay. He
sorry,
didn't mean
don't
it.
punch it. Right?
It is, and I think like the funny thing about it, and I think what's dope about you is that one, it's hard to make a horror movie, a successful horror movie, right? And two, I personally feel like it's hard to be funny because I don't laugh at everything, and there's next to nothing that really scares me. So, like when somebody can deliver on both of them, like you said, Scream is good. Scream is dope. There's a couple other ones out there, but like I think that's it. It takes a certain kind of mind to be able to produce a very funny and scary movie at the same time.
I agree with you. And you know what's funny? Like people always say, especially I mean this happened when I was in film school, people always said they say horror is hard and comedy is hard. And that's why everyone, you know, kind of leans toward drama because drama's like the generic thing to do.
Fuck was that?
But
No drama.
but I've never felt that way. I've always felt like comedy and horror were easier, but I don't think they actually are easier. I just think it's about who you are. And for me in general, my two favorite things to do are make people laugh and scare the shit out of people. So it's natural that that's something that I would gravitate toward and like.
Yep.
Now, whether I'm successful at it, I think that's for people to decide. But
You are.
But what I enjoy doing and what I like doing is making people laugh and scaring people. And I think the reason why I like those feelings and why I like eliciting those emotions from people is because they're guttural reactions that are physical. Like you actually have a physical reaction to something. And I think I've always been mesmerized by the fact that you can have a physical reaction to a scream, to something that's not even real, to something that's right in front of you. You can have a physical reaction. You know, people can't go to sleep at night. People are scared. People are giggling. They're crying with laughter. That opening scene in American Pie where Jim's fucking masturbating and his dad and his family all walks in on him and all that shit. Or his dad walks in on him and sits down with him. Like, that's hilarious. And like, you know, someone in the world has experienced that. But that was really funny. And like, you're getting this reaction in the audience where they're crying and they're laughing, and that's from watching a screen. So I think those have always been my favorite thing to do. But again, I'm also fucking weird as shit. Like I'm the type of person. I remember I went to a funeral. I think I told you this, but but for our viewers, I went to a funeral with my mom, and I remember saying in the car on the way there, I was like, I don't want to go up to the casket. Like, I don't want to like say my final goodbyes. And she was like, oh, you must be sad. Like, you must be, you know. And I was like, no, I'm not sad. Like, it's a natural thing. Everyone dies. And she was like, that's grim. And I was like, I'm sorry, it's true. But I was like, no, I was like, I kind of have this feeling that, you know, you're going to lean up and say your goodbye, and they're going to open their eyes and be like, gotcha, bitch, or some shit like that. And I was like, and my fear is not scared. My fear is I'm going to start laughing because all I'm going to picture is that happening. And I told her that, and my mom was like, you're an idiot. And then we went into the funeral, and we went up together to the casket, and we're sitting over saying, I guess, paying our final respects. And then my mom just starts laughing. and I was like, okay, everything I just told her in the car, she's thinking about right now. And we had to walk away because we looked like those assholes. But in general, like, I find things funny. Like, obviously, I don't find tragedy funny. I don't think it's, you know, when something really bad happens to people, I don't want that to happen. I don't think that. But I'm also, you know, I'm kind of very into old school comics. I don't like the PC world that we're living in. I think it's good to be respectful of other people's cultures, but I'm a big believer of making fun of every person. Make fun of equal opportunity, making fun of people. So I'm a big believer in, you know, humor and making people laugh and having fun. And if you can apply that in horror, every horror film had, I think even the deepest, darkest horror films, there's something funny about those things too. And I think that's also why, I mean, I'm into psychological stuff. I'm into sleep issues. I'm an insomniac. So I think a lot of that is why I love Nightmare on Elm Street. But I also think about it, like when you think of Halloween, not Halloween, and when you think of horror icons, you think of movies like Halloween and Michael Myers. Ooh, getting raspy there. You think of it's the raspy voice for the We're here. Yeah, you're not doing your night owl voice. I want to hear more of that. But anyway, so you think of Michael Myers, you think of Freddy Krueger, you think of Jason Voorhees, you think of Chucky, you think of Pinhead, you think of all these iconic horror villains. And again, my favorite is Freddy. And when I really think about that, why is Freddy my favorite? It's because he's funny. He's the only one who has a personality. He's the only one that will joke while he's murdering someone. And I connect to that because I joke when I murder people.
Right, simple. It's like I identify with you because you were my idol. You psycho. It's funny. I think my favorite, I'd say Michael Myers is my favorite, and I don't know. It's funny because Halloween is my top horror movie, so we also have that. But it's like, I think, in terms of simplicity, that's my approach to a lot of horror movies. Like, there are a lot of people that like. We'll go back to this, but The Witch. Remember, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Halloween. I love it so much because of the realism and the possibility of it being a true story, like something that you hear on the news. Oh, okay, this suburban town, Halloween night, some guy's dressed up as whoever, and he's going on a killing spree. That's not too far-fetched.
I agree.
And I think what's great about the movie in itself is that I don't think there's any blood in the movie. And I'm like, okay, so the environment and the atmosphere created the horror and the fear, and what this guy was doing, it didn't need blood, and I love when movies can make, cause, all right, so like Saw.
You're jumping into the suspense versus gore debate.
Well, I think
let's do it.
It's just one of those things for me. I'm like my approach to scary, and like you've probably even heard of the Night Owl stories. They're short horror stories. Usually, there's no anything about someone being stabbed or murdered or blood gushing.
Yeah, but I also think it's about the medium. When you're listening to someone tell you a story on the radio or on a podcast or something that. Yeah. The murder is not scary. It's the suspense building up to it.
Right. The psychological
aspect. I will say this. So I'm probably in the same boat with you. Like, suspense is better than gore.
Yeah.
But I also think we all need to adapt with the times, because a lot of what was happening. A lot of what happens in politics and in the government and in wartime reflects in horror films. So when horror films started coming out, and when people are getting murdered and then there's slashers or whatever, like that's after, that's like mid post Vietnam. It's when we started seeing these horrific things happen to people. The Cold War, when we started seeing all of these things happen to people, and it was like, holy shit, this stuff is actually real. Like, people can get murdered in a battlefield or whatever. And I think a lot of what happens is, as we grow older and newer generations come up, they're exposed and they're desensitized to a lot more.
Big time.
Like, I think a kid growing up today, like a 16-year-old today, is exposed to a lot more stuff. Like, a kid that was 16 years old today has experienced police shootings, has experienced school shootings, has experienced terrorist attacks. 16-year-old growing up by me, when I was 16 years old, what year was that? That was
1812.
that was 99, 2000. Like, 9/11 never even happened at that point yet. So, I think the biggest disaster that happened was was it the Unabomber? Yeah, it might have been the Unabomber.
School? The preschool?
No. In the Unabomber in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's so. I guess I was.
You
too
don't even
young.
know. You're too fucking young.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to a 6-year-old. But the first World Trade Center attack, and the Unabomber in the 90s. That was the biggest thing. And because social media wasn't around, because the internet wasn't around, because those things weren't around, if it's not national news, you're not hearing about it all the time.
Right.
But now a 16-year-old is used to, and I don't know why I keep picking 16. It could be any fucking age.
That's the age.
But they're experiencing all of these things. And I always say this, and this is really a harsh reality, but just like porn, like when I was growing up, like you had to sneak a magazine to see, to see a topless chick.
Right.
But nowadays, like any person can go online and type in Pornhub, and you could see everything. Yeah. And it's the same way with murder, and it's the same way with gore and all that kind of stuff. Like, you can go on YouTube, or you can Google, Al Qaeda killing people or ISIS killing people, and see that shit, and it's real. It's very, very real. I'm not recommending. Don't do that at home. I'm not recommending people do that, but you have that access.
Yeah.
So I think younger people and younger generations, I think if you tell a fantastic suspenseful story, I think you might get some people, but I think you'll also get some people that are like, that's not scary.
because they. Oh yeah, that makes sense.
I think
Wow.
this day and age, you have to balance psychological and suspense with gore. You
So
have
no
to
blood.
add some gore.
No blood.
But I think, that brings up the great debate because there's a group of filmmakers in the early 2000s that that started the whole torture porn thing.
Yeah, dude, I was not for it.
And you had people like I think they called them the Splat Brothers. So you had like Darren Lynn Bossman, you had Eli Roth.
Yep,
You had
yep.
people that made those films that were kind of just to show the ridiculous gore. And I think a lot of people put James Wan and Saw in there, and I think they're wrong for putting that in there because if you really watch Saw, Saw is not about the gore. Saw is more about the psychological aspect of it. I mean, this guy is doing this because he's literally been given a death sentence,
Right.
and he feels like it's his duty to make sure that people take their last breath and do something with it or something like that. He believes he's on this like
He's like a
Jesus-esque path,
Yeah.
where he's the righteous one, and he's teaching you the right way and the wrong way, and like that's very psychological. And the fact that the dude's fucking
true.
laying in the middle of the fucking bathroom the whole fucking movie
Was
and no
great.
one knows it, that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
that's very that's very whodunit-esque.
Yep.
And all that's psychological, all that's mystery.
Yeah.
But the way the people died is very vicious, and
Right.
I think it balanced that suspense and gore very, very well. And granted, in the last 5 years, you've had some good filmmakers up and coming that are starting to put their stamp on horror.
Yeah.
But post Wes Craven, what's the name that you think of when you think of horror? James Wan.
Isaiah Frizzell.
And Isaiah Frizzell. So I think I'm a big believer in suspense. I'm a big believer in telling a good story. Like I think It Follows was a good suspenseful horror film.
I just had that conversation. Yeah.
But those are once in a blue moon that you get one that's like all suspense. Because
Well, Paranormal Activity.
True.
I mean, you have. I don't know. Are we allowed to?
What do you want to say?
I don't know.
Are you talking about what I'm working on?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I am. It's. I feel like it's been announced, but it's not released. But I am about a month or two away from being done in production on the. I'm directing the documentary about the Paranormal Activity franchise. So that's fun. I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
From going from Hell House to the Paranormal Activity, I've learned a lot about found footage in the last few years. So.
Yeah. But I think that's a prime example. Like Paranormal Activity is a prime example of what it is. Like a movie that's completely revolved around psychological and suspense. Because the way I see it, the reason why I love that movie is like, all right, you had a movie theater full of people. At the end of the movie, or like you hear the footsteps, you hear this. Each person in that movie theater had a different depiction of what that monster looked like. Mm-hmm. And that's why I thought it was brilliant, because it was a way for everybody to have a visceral response to what's going on and a mental response, but you don't see it.
True, but here's the thing that I would say to that, and this is where I say the once in a blue moon thing.
Yeah.
You ask a general audience, not a horror fan, a general audience, what's a found footage film, or name a found footage film.
Blair Witch.
They'll say Blair Witch Project.
That's
Ask
true.
them to name another one, they'll say Paranormal Activity. Ask them to name another one, they have no fucking idea. Like there's been thousands of found footage films, and people don't remember them because they all kind of go together. They're all the same thing. None of them really stand out except for those two, really.
That's true.
Granted, there are a lot of really good found footage films out there.
Yeah.
There are. A lot of filmmakers have really made their name by doing found footage. And then you have, the Spanish film Wreck, Cloverfield. You have a lot of films that are found footage that are really, really good.
Yeah.
But it's a great medium that I think should kind of start applying to most genres and not just horror. And people have taken chances with it and done it. I think they did the superhero one. They did a few others, and there were some comedy ones or whatever. But I think found footage is a great genre to play with, and it's definitely a low budget genre. But back to the point, you don't see. It's few and far between in terms of how many of those that are groundbreaking. But that's the thing. Paranormal Activity, that franchise is by far the most successful and the best found footage franchise of all time.
Very true.
I believe it's $1 billion franchise, and it's the most profitable film franchise of all time. Like, you can't really, like, if you start comparing other found footage films like Hell House, for instance, or you compare them to Lake Mungo, or compare it to
Like Mungo, yeah.
Compare it to Grave Encounters and compare it to those things. Like, again, general audiences probably don't know what those movies are.
Right.
And, they all kind of fall in line. It's like a bunch of people with a camera. They go into a house. They go into a cemetery. They go into a mental institution. They go into a place and film some stuff.
Yeah.
And then eventually shit happens and paranormal shit happens.
Death.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm with you. But, yeah, you know what? I always say Paranormal Activity did what I think Nightmare on Elm Street did for Paranormal Activity did for found footage films what Nightmare on Elm Street did for slasher films.
Okay.
Because before both of them,
Yeah.
let's talk slashers. Before Nightmare on Elm Street, slashers were all about a guy in a mask or someone in a mask, not a guy. Could be a girl too.
Could be a lady killer.
Someone in a mask killing someone.
Yep.
And the body count being high and it being bloody and all that kind of shit.
Yep.
It took Nightmare on Elm Street for it to not only be a psychological thing, but it also to be like, you could watch Friday the 13th and be like, that was scary. I'm scared, but I don't have to go home.
Deal with that.
I don't have to go in. I'm not going into the woods anytime in the near future, so I'm good. Like,
Bitch, I might.
No one's gonna come after Miss Voorhees isn't gonna come after me. Jason's not gonna come after me. You could watch Halloween and then be like, well, I'm not Michael Myers' brother, or I'm not in Haddonfield, or I'm not, and so you feel that disconnect. With Nightmare on Elm Street, even though, you can dive in and be like, well, I wasn't one of those sons or daughters of the parents that killed Freddy Krueger. Take that out of it for a second. Everyone needs to go to sleep.
Everybody goes to sleep. Yeah.
Everyone needs to go to sleep. So it took something that was really scary, and instead of it being like, well, it's just the one-off place that you go to, it's this one-off camp that you go to, it's this one-off town that you're in, it was like, everyone has to go to sleep. This hits everyone. So
that's true.
You will have nightmares because these people have nightmares, and it's just, it took everything and put it in your home.
Yes.
And that's what Paranormal Activity did, because Blair Witch Project was the thing before it, but Blair Witch Project, which was great, but Blair Witch Project was in the woods. It was witches. It was in the woods. It was this people looking for this, and you could leave that and be scared and be like, okay, well, I'm not going to the fucking woods. Like, I'm not going hide looking for this. Paranormal Activity took the found footage approach and put it into your home and put it into, like, when you sleep at night. Like, one of the scariest things I think in Paranormal Activity is when Katie wakes up in the middle of the night and stands over Mika.
Yeah.
And then it kind of fast forward and she's standing over him for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff's scary because it's stuff that you don't know what happens when you're sleeping. And and if you're sleeping and your partner's in the bed next to you, like, how do you know that they're not waking up and staring at you? How do you know that they're not possessed? And it's like, yeah, granted, they're probably not, but
they are.
But I think it plays on those fears, and it's like, well, you're not in a cabin in the woods. You're not in a tent in the woods. You're in the comfort of your own home, and you're terrified. And I think those films are few and far in between, and that's why people like Wes Craven and Oren Peli, that's why they are who they are.
That's true. I like that. See, guys, he's a very brilliant mind. Crazy, but brilliant nonetheless. Speaking of crazy, dude.
My tattoos?
Your ink. I've been waiting to bring that up.
Well, you can see. Some people can see. I don't know if anyone's going to be able to see this.
Well, you can narrate them. Like, give Bob Ross a voice as you describe each one.
Basically, we have brushstrokes on. No, I have one sleeve, and believe me, I know that when I got this, it was one of those, when you do this, people are going to look at you differently for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But I have my face tattooed. No. I have two sleeves of tattoos, and one sleeve is all iconic horror villains to me. They're not necessarily, I mean, yes, they do have the original 3 on here.
Yeah.
But they are what I would call the most influential horror icons in my life, like what has either scared me or terrified me. So I have Fred, and closest to me, like by my shoulder, like the closest to my face and closest to my heart is like is the scariest, and then the furthest away from me is the least scariest in terms of these. So
that's interesting.
So I have Freddy Krueger right next to me. Then kind of on both sides going down my arm, I have Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
And then you move down, and in the elbow area you have Ghostface, because even though when you look back on iconic killers, Ghostface, because they've made 4 Screams and because they parodied it with Scary Movie and made 5 or 6 or 20 of those, it may not be that scary, but again, that goes back to the concept of a person in a mask.
Of course.
And I was terrified of Scream when it came out.
Yeah.
So that one sits in the middle, and then below that I have Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Love her.
And Pinhead. And Pinhead from Hellraiser. But the fun thing about this was I originally went to my tattoo artist, who's awesome, and I told him that I wanted to do 10 horror icons on my arm. And
10, okay.
And he was like, okay, great. And he's like, but, and he started looking at my arm and drawing up things, and he's like, you're going to have to cut it down to 8. And I was like, okay, why? And he's like, because I want people to look at your arm and know who they are. He's like, I want them to be a far distance away and see that that's Freddy Krueger on your arm.
That guy's crazy.
He's like, if we do 10, you're not going to be able to see it unless you're up close and personal.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I narrowed it down to 8, and then we started doing work. And then after he did the first 2, he was like, we're probably going to have to cut it down to 7 or 6. And so he's like, you're not going to be able to fit them all in. So eventually we wound up getting done, and we put the 6 on them that I just said.
Okay.
So we do have 4 icons that are not on my arm that are very influential to me, but they don't exist.
They don't.
Would you like to know who they are?
Hell yeah.
Okay. So I believe number 7, the next one was Chucky from Child's Play.
Okay.
The next one after that was Pennywise from It. And I think just in general, clowns scare the shit out of people.
Yeah.
Thank you, John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah.
But then the other 2, and this was a hot topic. This is a nerve-wracking thing. So, granted, you could say that technically the face of Pinhead and the face of Freddy Krueger are technically the actors who play them, but they have the makeup on, they have all that other kind of stuff.
Right.
I am a big believer of not putting someone's face on your skin, because if I did, like for instance, if I was doing a comedy thing, and I just I was going to do Jim Carrey from Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
I was going to do Lloyd Christmas.
Yeah.
If I put Lloyd Christmas's face on me, it's Jim Carrey's face. Like I'm getting another person's face tattooed on me. And I don't know Jim Carrey. Like I love him, but I don't know him.
Right.
Why the hell would I tattoo his face on my body?
You know Leatherface and Pinhead.
Correct. Yeah, we're tight.
Yeah.
But the other 2 characters were hard because their characters aren't necessarily, it's the actors. They're not wearing masks. They're not doing, something creepy to their face. They're not behind anything. And I see you're wondering who these 2 people are. I will say that both of these are extremely iconic horror villains. Extremely iconic. But they are men.
Okay.
And if I got their faces, it would be the actors' faces. I had a creative way of how I wasn't going to do that, and I'll tell you that in a second, but I want you to guess who they are.
It's funny because I was like, I'm going to do some trivia for you, but
some trivia for you. Yeah.
Plot twist.
How's it taste, motherfucker?
It's bitter. Can use some sugar. Who two horror icons and their actual faces?
Mm-hmm.
Are they like classics?
One of them, I would say, is 100%
Jack
classic.
Nicholson is one of them, or no?
No.
Okay.
No, get out of here. Earlier than that.
Earlier than The Shining?
Mm-hmm. He also was a mama's boy.
Oh, Norman Bates?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
so
one.
That would have been Anthony Perkins' face on my body. But the thing that I was going to do if I got it was I was going to do the silhouetted him in the shower scene where you can't see his face.
Classic scene.
So that was 9, and then 10. And 10 gets talked about a lot because 10 technically isn't a horror film. It's considered a thriller film, but it was the first film that kind of bridged that gap, and it was also the first horror thriller film to win an Academy Award.
It's not Clockwork Orange, is it? Was it before Psycho or after?
It was in the 90s, early 90s. It's a movie about serial killers and the FBI.
7?
No, good guess, but earlier than that.
A movie about serial killers in the FBI.
The FBI works with a serial killer to track another
Hannibal
serial killer.
Lecter?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
And I would have got it with him with the mask on when they were transporting him.
Okay, so that would have been Anthony Hopkins'
Correct.
face. But he's a great person to have on your body.
Sure, but and then you brought up another good point, which is a lot of people always say to me that, oh, you have a bunch of serial killers on your arm, and I'm like, fictional serial killers.
Sure, Jan.
Fictional. I don't actually have like John Wayne Gacy and Ted Bundy on my arm, and I'm in support of murder. Like,
you know what?
I'm in support of art, not murder.
That's valid, because that would be some shit if somebody was on. Oh man, they're flying low tonight.
Flying low.
We'll hold for plane.
Hold for plane.
Hold for plane. What's the minutes on there? What's it say?
45:32.
Oh, sweet.
You're supposed to clear your throat into the mic, right? I could do this for hours.
I love it. You're a mess. So what was I gonna say to you?
Fictional serial killers.
Yeah, fictional serial killers. I you have a valid point, because I think if I saw someone walking down the street with, like, John Wayne Gacy, BTK,
That's
Charles
fucked up.
Manson, that's
fucked up.
fucking twisted, because you're literally idolizing someone who did some real shit to real people.
And listen, I know that a lot of these films are inspired by things.
Of course.
So, but, and that natural, like, you're trying to scare people. You're trying to, play on their fears. But I think when I first came to LA, I went to the Museum of Death.
Yeah. How was that? I've never been.
Weird.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, "You would love this, Joe. You would love this, Joe." And I guess because I have fictional serial killers tattooed on my arm, people assume that I just love murder.
Right. It's like, guys, it's not the same thing.
Well, I had an issue with two things. So, first off, it was really, really, really weird to me because, like, when people make money off of Nightmare on Elm Street, when people make money off of Freddy Krueger, you're making money off of a fictional character.
Right.
When you start making money off of Gacy or off of Bundy or off, like, you're selling tickets so that people can see what they did to people, I kind of have an issue with that.
I don't want to see that.
Listen, I don't want to judge people for what they do. Make your dollar. It's America. Do whatever you need to do.
Right.
But at the same time, I felt uncomfortable. I was like, this is weird. Like, I've just paid to see these brutal murders. Like, this is weird. So that was one. And then the second thing was, and don't get me wrong, I am not on his side on this, but the crazy ass that is O.J. Simpson, they had an entire section for O.J. Simpson, and I was like, wait a second. I was like, sure, everyone knows he did it. No one questions that.
He wrote a book about it.
Yeah, everyone knows he did it.
Right.
But technically, according to our judicial system, he didn't do it.
He said, if I did do it.
Correct. But again, you're putting serial killers in this museum of death,
right,
and going from one serial killer to the next to the next, and then you go to someone who was accused, but was never convicted, and that's what I found strange. I was like, that's weird. I'm like, this whole section is about Nicole Brown Simpson's murder, and it was like, well, this is just a murder. Like, if you're gonna do this, why don't you just have sections of murders, like just regular murders all over the place?
We have this murder over here in Exhibit F.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I found that a little weird, because it was like, well, he wasn't actually convicted, and he wasn't actually. He's not in the same. In my opinion, he's not in the same category as these other people.
I agree, because he's not like getting people in their sleep and also, just doing reckless shit.
I mean, when you look at Ted Bundy, like, it was years of murdering people and years of all this shit.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying
had history.
And all of those serial killers did.
Yeah.
But when you look at O.J. Simpson, like, that's like, you could call it a crime of passion, but one, he was never convicted. And again, I agree. I believe that he was guilty. I'm not saying he wasn't, but he wasn't convicted. So it was kind of someone being like, yeah, let's just put it in there anyway.
Yeah.
And then two, he murdered, allegedly, 2 people in a fit of passion. It wasn't like he went on a murder spree that we know of. It wasn't like he went on a murder spree for 15 years and was hiding all these bodies in his basement or something. So I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the same when you're comparing him to all of these, other big time serial killers that are kind of, I guess, the famous serial killers.
I agree. That you make a good point. When you put it that way. So basically, you're just telling everybody, look, if you see my horror tattoos, Don't judge me because I'm not that dude. Like,
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Don't judge a book by its cover. Some books you should judge by their cover because they're boring as shit. That's real talk. But he's not a boring book, guys. He's a nice book.
Correct. Thanks.
He's a great
Appreciate
book.
that.
I got you, bro.